Are you optimistic for this new year?
Do you know what?
No.
I am.
For heaven's sake.
No, I am.
Why?
Let me tell you
Where's the
why.
evidence to suggest it's going to get any better?
Here comes the evidence that
All
this
right.
is going to get better.
All right.
So, first of all, Donald Trump is now going to be the American president.
It's like
This is good.
That's like throwing a grenade into a trench and going, well, it could work, it might not, though. You know,
No, things have already changed. There's already this sense of people going, oh, got to do things a bit differently. It's like the mood music's changed. OK, we're zagging and everyone else is zigging because they've all realised that, you know, they've got to get with the programme of closing borders and not, you know, mutilating children and all those horrible things that we've been doing for the past decade. And Donald Trump's got to come in, bam, first 100 days in power, get things done.
So
and we're
another
country
weird. Is going to have a good year. That's a promising start. Another country is going to have a good year.
Yeah, but the thing is, these people, these sheeple in government, like Sir Keir Starmer, you see him sitting in the corner of that room. Yeah. Do you want to know why he sits in the corner of the room?
Go on.
Because that's the closest plug sockets. They can plug him in and he doesn't run out of battery halfway through that speech.
That's true.
Yeah. So the thing is, he doesn't have a brain or conviction or belief or ideology. He's just some automaton who wants to be there for the kudos. And as for the rest of them in the Labour Party, I dare you to try and find enough brain cells to make one average-sized human brain between a lot of them. Yeah. So they're kind of, they aren't a thing.
But they are in power for 4.5 years now. And we don't have a mechanism to get rid of them.
But it almost doesn't matter, because I've begun to realise that you could put a goat in 10 Downing Street. As long as it's, you know, just compliant and complicit, it just ticks along as it's always done. What you need is someone, you know, it's really going to change here when someone big with conviction and motivation and belief and an agenda gets in and goes like, we're actually going to do things. But otherwise... When they get in. So in 4.5 years' time. No, but until then, they will just go, I don't want to be Trump,
Eeyore
agenda,
in the corner.
You know.
I don't want to be Eeyore over here.
Well,
that's the problem, is that it is rather a long way away, the potential sunlit uplands. And in the meantime, we're caught between competing spheres of influence on the global stage. One is the United States, which could conceivably go in a very promising direction. One of them is the European Union, which we have...
It's going down the
Well, that's the point. Despite voting to leave, we somehow are now about to chain ourselves even closer to on worse terms. And the other is China, which is actually very far off in the distance. It's got nothing to do with us anyway. So those are the options.
Okay,
Get dragged behind
let me
in
tell
multiple
you why
slipstreams.
it's good. America's going to go on the up. It's going to go great guns. They're going to do things like start controlling the borders. It will give political cover for other leaders in the West to do the same.
Winning,
the problems which affect America seem to be affecting all of the West. So it will kind of give motivation, political cover, inspiration. It sets a trend. It sets a narrative. You know, the first country that goes, we're going to actually, I don't know, turn back boats or whatever it is. Everyone else will then go, oh, I can do the same now. So, you know, we just need that first domino to fall.
Do you think that this Labour Party would actually do that, though? Do you think
I reckon they would.
Do you really think that a government that's prepared to trash children's education over very, you know, petty sort of ideological points would actually go, yeah, do you know what, we're going to turn the boats around? No, they aren't. No, they aren't. They are. They are a good 5 to 10 years behind the rest of the Western world. They are still signed up to this idea, A, that the international community is a thing and that its opinion matters, and B, that, you know, Britain is all open and that migration is fantastic. The rest of the world is waking up to the fact that if you just have sort of untrammeled migration and it's very sort of unpicky and anybody can come in, and you marry that to a welfare state and you marry that to an unproductive economy, that it'll work out. Everyone else is getting it, but they aren't, and I don't think they're going to.
Well, I don't know about that, because I think, like I said, they're sheeple. They'll just see what everyone else is going, so we can do the same now.
You see, I think that's being a bit kind to sheep, to be honest. I don't think that they are. I think that they're very ideologically driven. If I'm being completely honest, I think it's very foolish. I think it's very foolish to just sort of take them as these sort of empty shells. I think they do have an ideology. I just think it's very out of date, even for progressive Western Europe.
You're definitely right when it comes. They're going to trash our economy. Oh, that's true. The economy's gone under Labour.
Yeah, this is the continuation of Blairism, but a good almost 2 decades after the end of Blairism.
I wish I had someone optimistic in the studio.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. We can be optimistic about other things if you want.
Okay, well, shall we try that? What about energy bills?
Well, now you're just trolling me. Come on, this is your job to be optimistic. We're the yin and yang, and this is Britain in a nutshell right now.
I find out this morning, I was like, you'll be able to explain this, because that's the sort of thing that you do. This is where you will be useful.
Oh, great. Thanks.
So energy bills are going to be going up, and especially they're going to go up in Austria and Eastern Europe, because I didn't realise this, but Gazprom's contract with Ukraine comes to an end. I'm like, there's still been a contract.
Yeah.
Gazprom being the biggest energy supplier, biggest Russian energy company, had still been paying Ukraine to transit their gas basically through to Europe, and that deal's done, babies. Which I'm amazed that it was still going on. But you know, Putin needs this cash money.
Well,
Putin
needs cash, and Ukraine needs that cash as well. Actually, it is quite amusing that it's been going on.
We're going to blast holes in each other, but at the same time make money from each other.
But it's also a form of being able to keep diplomatic channels open whilst not having any diplomatic ties at all. It helps actually if you have a very important energy contract between the two of you, which both of your economies are desperately reliant upon.
Yeah.
And this is also, it must be said, one of the things that has been, I think, confused a lot of people who haven't been keeping as close an eye on the war is Ukraine's inability, or rather reluctance at this point in time, to target much of Russia's energy infrastructure. Because you'd be sat there thinking, well, if you really wanted to hurt Russia, you'd start blowing up pipelines. Yeah. But of course you won't if you're also reliant on those pipelines.
Right, because you're getting money from the transit.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, it was one of the reasons why people were sort of pointing the finger at Ukraine over the Nord Stream explosion as well, saying, well, in whose interest in it? Obviously it's Ukraine, even though everybody turned around and went, oh, it's the Russians, they've blown up their own pipeline. Even though they have the tap and they can just turn it off, it's those dastardly Russians again. No, it was the US and Ukraine. Everybody knows that, because then that limits the numbers of pipes that Russia can actually use to transit its stuff into Europe. But this deal is coming to an end.
This is the new thing for 2025,
It's coming to an end, isn't it, as Donald Trump, as you say, is about to take the reins in the White House, and he's very keen to get a deal done. And it does sort of feel as if we might be edging closer to a point where there might be a deal there. I mean, Zelensky talking about the possibility of conceding territory, or at least claims on territory.
It's about 20%, isn't it, that Russia's sort of got at the moment?
Yeah, and it's a tricky one.
Just don't give them the coastal areas.
It's a tricky one because Russia would turn around in that situation and go, oh, well, thanks for recognising this territory that we already have, but most of the world already does. You know, Western countries are putting sanctions on Russia and on the areas that they're occupying, but most of the rest of the world doesn't care.
Yeah, it does almost condone Russia, because they'll be like, they've finally seen sense. This was always ours. That's the problem. But he wants the access to the seas.
Of course he does.
It's the Odessa. It's all around there.
Of course he does.
Got Crimea. That's all back control of the maritime routes.
There's a slight difficulty right now, which is that Russia would turn around and then say, well, thanks for this, but we already have it. We don't need you to recognise it. What's actually to stop us pushing on? They've, I think, taken an area that's slightly larger than London in the last couple of months. They're doing quite well. There was always this likelihood.
Someone listened to the Today programme this morning, didn't they?
Well, no, actually. I didn't listen. Do I strike you as being alert enough to have been listening to the radio at this point? No.
By osmosis.
No, it's nice to know that the Today programme is caught up about 2 weeks later. But yeah, it's one of those situations where the Russians, through attrition, are going to just keep on taking more and more territory. So the Russians would then turn around in the face of Donald Trump and Zelensky and say, OK, thank you for giving us this territory, which we already have, but we're going to keep on with this anyway because we're winning.
Right.
And then, of course, come the questions of, well, OK, there's this deal that's coming to an end. There's what's currently going on in Syria. There's Russia's access, therefore, to North Africa. There are other parts at play, which makes the timing of what happened in Syria very curious.
The interesting thing politically is what has been potentially mooted if there is a territorial deal. You know, let's stop the war and Putin gets X, Y, and Z. Don't give him the coastal stuff, anyway. What's being mooted is then, on the Ukraine side of things, there'll be peacekeeping forces. And the suggestion is, where should they come from?
Yeah.
Well, Poland, who'll probably be willing to help. They'll get stuck in.
Yeah,
the others are Germany, France, and the UK. Now, the UK is one thing, because I think if you poll most British people, there'll be a few outliers, but a lot of British people go, yeah, we've got to help Ukraine. Yeah. Sending our troops to actually, you know, potentially come face to face with Russian troops is a different thing. France and Germany, of course, where there's a far higher level of anti-sentiment against helping Ukraine, are both gone. They've basically got no governments.
But again,
Germany's facing critical elections. France is essentially got no government. It has to wait until it can have an election, but it's just not functioning at all. This is actually a doorstep issue in those countries. I can't see any government coming into either of those countries going, yeah, we're going to go along with this.
I don't think it would be those countries, though. That's the end of it. It would be Poland. And this is, again, a reason why I don't... Yeah, and this is, again, the reason why I don't... Well, Poland is spending a lot on its military. And it's doing that for very obvious reasons. And again, it's one of the reasons why I think Russia would be very anti the idea of actually signing a peace agreement, because I think there'd be a Polish, we call it peacekeepers, there'd be an expeditionary force the other side of the Dnieper by the end of the week with US and British assistance. I don't think they'd want that at all, because those troops would never leave. The other thing, of course, is sooner or later, if this keeps on going, Romanian peacekeepers will end up in Moldova as well. And then at that point, that's another non-NATO country that then has NATO troops in it. So the second that you're making peace deals, Russia actually has a lot more to lose by making a peace deal now than it did, say, a year ago when the war wasn't going particularly well. Because it would mean there's the finite amount of land that you're going to get, and it's a good amount of land, but you're not going to get any more, because then you'll be going to war with a NATO country. And that's even if Ukraine doesn't join NATO, which it's not going to. But you might see the speeding up process, say, of Ukraine joining the European Union, which would be a halfway
There will be this sort of public proclamations, declarations, there'll be all of the sort of precursory treaty signs, the economic partnership arrangements, the, what do they call it when they, I mean, Turkey has had one of those for ages. A shakedown. No, Turkey's had one of those with the EU for ages, a sort of pre-accession agreement.
Yeah.
Like, we will join the EU at some point when they want us, when we meet all the... It's just nonsense. It's just there for sort of diplomacy purposes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And also a bit of breaking news for you, ladies and gentlemen, that should surprise absolutely nobody. We have the total of migrants who crossed the English Channel to the UK in 2024, which is 36,816, up 25% on 2023. That's according to provisional government figures. A flow that is unlikely to stop. It's a bit like, when they smash the gangs, what are we going to do? It's a bit like the war on drugs.
No, you're being the pessimistic one. That is 30-odd thousand NHS doctors and nurses that we desperately need.
Yeah.
All of them. They're going to build bridges, they're going to build roads and reservoirs, nuclear technology. It's going to be fantastic.
We need to empty out the Ritz. They deserve better.
It's going to be fantastic. You're going to get tired of winning.
I know.